Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics. In this video, I'd like to discuss Rishi Sunak's apparent snub to the Tory heartlands as he hides away from the Farmers' Union conference. And given his party's poll ratings, even in the rural strongholds, this decision does not seem to be in line with actually wanting to win the next election. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So I don't have enough details on what might be a Northern Ireland Protocol settlement, so I've got no option but to discuss how Sunak seems to be ignoring the polls again. I did warn him. Funnily enough, in the members stream this week, the topic of whether Rishi Sunak wants to win the next election or not came up. Now, I have been torn on the issue. I mean, you look at Rishi Sunak, first of all, we could look at Rishi Sunak and go, what does he want to do? Why did he come into politics? He's not a career politician. He had a bit of a career first. Yes, he's very young. He made loads of money. He could carry on making loads of money. What does he want to do? You know, and you look at him and say, what do you want to achieve? And he says, I'm a Thatcherite, really. Are you? Are you? Because you campaigned against Brexit. Campaigned in favour of Brexit, sorry. That meant leaving the single market. Thatcher was a big fan of the single market. Are you really a Thatcherite? What does that mean anyway? I mean, where do you stand? Well, I'm a low-tax Tory, you see. Are you? Because I couldn't help but notice you introduced the largest tax burden this country has seen since the post-war rebuilding projects as Chancellor. And then when you became Prime Minister, you whacked it up even higher. What does he stand for? Like, you look at Keir Starmer and you see the move. I mean, most of the policies that are coming out from Labour, of course, are the short-term fixes, but the long-term stuff, the reform of the House of Lords, little suggestions that he's going to take on, the media, for example. Those are his two things that it doesn't have to actually do to fix the short-term problems, but those are what seems to be his political projects. What's Rishi Sunak's? We don't seem to have one. So therefore, if we don't have a sense of what it is, why did he want to be Prime Minister? You know, I think there's a strong possibility he wanted to become Prime Minister just for his place in the history books, not to do anything, just for his place in the history books. Regardless of whatever else he does or fails to do, he will be the first non-white Prime Minister in the UK. That is more than just a footnote. You know, his page in the history books is now sort of assured. Obviously, he doesn't want to be the first non-white Prime Minister to be defeated by a lettuce. So he needs to make a good fist of running the country and then exit as the valiant loser after his party had been in power for 14 years and he did as well as could be expected. Hence the efforts to maybe finally put the wrangles over the Northern Ireland Protocol to bed. We may be getting an announcement next week, we hear, maybe Tuesday. It will be helpful to him to be able to say he actually achieved something, because he doesn't seem to want to achieve anything else. But this is something he could say, I did what Boris Johnson messed about with for years. But this is not going to win the election. Like, it can help a little bit because some people will see it as, oh, he gets things done. But it's not one of the issues that is going to win the general election for the Tories. But then again, neither are any of his headline policy promises. None of them address the main concerns of voters, as I've discussed recently. So I look at the situation and think, yeah, he's just going through the motions and he'll be happy to bow out at the next election, place in the history books secured, off he goes, makes more money. But then there was that summit last week, bringing people together to discuss how to work more closely with the EU. There is no short-term payout for Sunak from this. Nothing that was discussed there is going to come to fruition before the election. It's all for 2025 when we renegotiate the trade and cooperation agreement. In fact, it risked surely setting some of his MPs against him. That conference and the more explicit acceptance from the government this week that Brexit has caused economic damage, even if they still argue that it'll be worth it in the end, is a sign that Sunak has longer-term ambitions. So on balance, I was asked, and I came to the conclusion that I think he probably does want to make a serious effort to win the next election. I don't think he's abandoned it. But then I read that he'll not be attending the annual conference for the NFU, representing farmers. Now, he's going to be sending a recorded message instead. This seems curious. Just as in the United States, Conservatives in the UK depend heavily on rural areas as the bedrock of their power base. This is why shafting them over Brexit and withdrawing their subsidies over the next few years seemed to me to be a suboptimal strategy. I could appreciate that they would get away with it in 2019 because lots of people were unhappy with the Conservatives, even in their own heartland, but they saw them as at least the superior choice to Corbyn's Labour. But there was no guarantee that Labour would continue to remain toxic to the electorate. I'll tell you what I find strange about Sunak snubbing the Farmers' Conference. Of course, the farming community are not happy with the Conservatives and attendance would be uncomfortable without a plan of action. But he also needs to bear in mind the following. First, Sunak is not going down especially well in, say, the Red Wall seats. This is probably why Lee Anderson has been sent out to shore up support there. I think that decision is going to bite them on the arse, but that is the likely reason. But surely Sunak is more palatable to the more traditional Tory voters, even more presentable than Boris Johnson. If Sunak cannot embrace the company of people who tend to be like traditional Conservatives, I know not all farmers are Conservatives of any kind, but there's a hell of an affinity from many, then which group can he approach and win over? If Sunak can't build bridges with farmers, how on earth does he think he's going to reverse his party's fortunes? Because the second issue is Sunak, he can't play a defensive game here. I've said before, Johnson got away with dodging the odd TV debate and interview during the 2019 election campaign because he was ahead in the polls. It was less damaging for him to look like he was running scared than to go on them and mess up. But Sunak's behind, and not just nationally, he everywhere, including the blue wall. Now, terms like red wall and blue wall are not always strictly defined, but just to know, blue wall doesn't refer to strong Tory seats, safe Tory seats. The blue wall is defined as being seats which vote Conservative, they vote Conservative for a very long time, but weren't really impressed with Brexit. And it's the traditionally safe Tory seats which have become vulnerable in the last couple of years. According to Redfield and Wilton, who carry out some polling, Labour continue to enjoy a significant poll lead over the Tories in these areas. Now, the lead has come down of late. And it's possible it'll come down completely by the election, who knows? But consider this. In the past, it's not just that the Tories had a commanding poll lead in these seats, it's their heartlands. Labour weren't even in second place. They weren't anywhere in these seats. These seats, you might have 20 to 25% of people voting Labour, and that's it. The people who swing their votes swing between the Conservatives and the Lib Dems. That Labour are even competing with the Tories in these polls, much less beating them right now, should be a major warning sign to the Conservatives. They're always going to struggle to hold on to their red wall seats, and that currently looks impossible at the moment, barring a stunningly unlikely sequence of events. But the Conservatives are now vulnerable in their own heartlands. And what is Sunak doing about this? What good does it do him if he focuses on the red wall, but still narrowly loses out on almost all of them, makes a good fist of it, but ultimately doesn't get him his seats, which is about the best he can hope for at the moment, but lose a load of formerly safe seats in the south? The National Farmers Union Conference will, of course, have farmers from all over the country, but there will be a lot from these blue wall seats in the south of England, as well as Tory areas. There are other sort of what you might call blue wall areas sort of in the rest of the country as well. Rural areas that mostly vote Conservative but won't always. You look at North Shropshire, one of the safest seats the Tories had. They had it for 200 years. The first Duke of Wellington was knocking about when they won that seat. They've never lost it. Then all of a sudden they lost it to Boris Johnson. And you think, why wouldn't he engage with farmers as well as other groups? Keir Starmer's going to be at that conference in person and give a speech. And because he'll be there in person, he'll be talking directly to delegates and he'll answer their questions. And other people, even if they don't talk to him, will see him doing that. They'll see him there. They'll see that he's making himself available. Sunak's sending a video. This is not the action of a Prime Minister who wants to retake the initiative and snatch victory from the jaws of defeat at the next election, who wants to present himself as a leader. It's more like the Prime Minister I originally took him for, who has basically already achieved his ambition and just wants to avoid making himself look too silly while events run their course now. But then the Brexit conference was not in line with that strategy. He was never going to... That was a ridiculous thing to do politically. If he just thought, I've done now, I just want to sort of wait out my time. So I look at Sunak and I just see a complete mass of contradictions. I find actions which don't make sense if he wants to win the next election. But I also see some which don't make sense if he's not that bothered. It's just a confused mess. In terms of the national picture, the latest YouGov polling shows a net swing of 16% of 2019 Tory voters going to Labour. And it's been fairly consistently about that. But along with a swing of about 35% of 2019 Lib Dem voters saying they'd do the same. Sunak has got problems. Like sitting back and hiding away. That can work if you think some event is just going to naturally shift the equilibrium. There's something in the pipeline that's going to shift things back in your favour. But that's not going to happen. That's not realistic. You know, does he think that when inflation's halved, which it's going to do without him, he's suddenly going to get all that support swinging back to him on that? No. It is akin to being 3-0 behind in a football match, and instead of going on the attack, you park the bus in the hope that the opposing team will suddenly collapse with food poisoning. In the real world, if you've lost voters, or there's a pool of undecided voters, they're not sure yet, you go out and you grab them before your opponent does. Sunak is not doing this. In fact, some of his policies almost seem designed to actively irritate them. But there we are. Those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. Hope you found the video interesting. If you did, please click the like button if you'd like to support the channel further, the join button for memberships, and until next time, I'll see you later.